Hey there, thanks for tuning in. This is the Tammy Tine Design YouTube channel. I'm Tammy, and today I'm creating a one-page layout with one photo. First, let me show you this cut file I created. Who out there loves big cut files the way I do? I love making layouts with these kinds of files. Let me turn this over and show you that each letter is cut individually. I'm not a fan of fussy cutting, so when I have an outline title or words like this, I will also provide the backer. But wait, there's more. With this cut file, you'll not only get the outline file and the individual letters, but I'll also give you a third file that will allow you to cut the backing from a single sheet of cardstock or pattern paper. Let me bring this in and show you that all of the letters are attached like the outline file. So you would just need to put the outline file directly on top. It's sized to fit perfectly under the outline file. No fussy cutting or paper piecing necessary. This gives you options because if you want to use paper scraps and cut each letter individually, you can do that too. I know there are ways to do this yourself inside the die cut machine software, but I'm happy to just provide it with my files. Why do all the work when the machine can cut it for you? I'm using the Storyteller collection from Cocoa Vanilla Studios today. My layout will have a white cardstock background, and I'll be cutting strips from this Paint Stripes Brighter Day rainbow paper. I also have the ephemera pieces, the flowers, and the puffy hearts and dots for embellishing later. So I've already cut the pattern paper strips at 1.5 inches each. I have the silicone mat here from scrapbook.com to protect my table. I'm just adding a bit of water with a water pen to help break down the paper fibers so I can rough up the edges. And then when this dries, there's a little bit of added texture. I'm just bending back the edges and rolling them a bit. There's nothing fancy here. These strips will go on either side of my layout, and I want these edges to be on the inside and to look like the paper has been torn away to reveal the fun cut file inside. This is a pretty quick process. I'm going to tear the paper in a few different places too. You could always add deeper tears if you've got another pattern on the back side that you want to show more. This pattern paper is double-sided, but the pattern on the back isn't my focus. You can always add a little more water if the paper doesn't soften up enough. The water pen helps control how much water gets on there, but you can always add more. On my second strip, I'm starting with the opposite end. When I put these strips on the layout, I want the blue to be at the top and the red to be at the bottom. This is a step you can skip if the distressing is not your style. You could ink the edges. You could draw some ink lines around the outside if you wanted to add some definition. You could also add some acrylic paint to the edges if you wanted to reinforce the painted look. I think that would look cool. Do whatever fits your layout. I wanted to add this little detail of distressing because the rest of the layout is basically the cut file. Anything else I do on these paper strips adds some interest and texture. These strips will frame the outside of my layout and help keep the focus on the middle. I have a wreath stencil and I'm going to add some inking behind my photo on the background with Lost Shadow Oxide ink. I tend to just eyeball the placement. I know I have a T-square ruler somewhere, but I just never think to get it on my desk. I'm going to add some pencil marks where my photo will go. You probably won't be able to see these marks on camera. Wait, I can't see them either. It would help if there was lead in the pencil, wouldn't it? Okay, try this again. Yes, I think you'll be able to see these marks now. With the pencil lines as my guide, I'm placing the stencil so that the inking will show just a little bit behind the photo. Here's my Lost Shadow Oxide ink and my inking brush. This color is very light and will be a very subtle touch. I didn't want to mount my photo, but I did want something up here to draw the eye to the photo. I'm not being precise with this stencil at all. My intent is not to have a perfect outline of the stencil. My photo is going to cover most of it up anyway. All I wanted was just a little shadow of color and the cool pattern of the stencil in the background. This is another step you could skip if the inking isn't for you. I didn't want to map my photo because the size is perfect to nestle next to the cut file. If I added a mat, I think it would have competed a bit with the cut file, and that's not what I wanted. This color is so pretty in person, and it provides just that little hint of color, and it's all I wanted. I'm going to line my photo back up and see if I like how this looks. Actually, I think it needs just a little bit more color to the upper right side, so I'm going to line my stencil back up. Again, I'm not being precise. It doesn't bother me that this stencil is not lined up perfectly with what I've already inked. That little bit I inked in the wrong place will be covered up by my photo, so it's not a problem at all. Let me put my photo back in here. Yes, that looks better. That's all the inking I will need to do on this layout. When you have a large cut file like this, I feel like a lot of the design work is done for you. There's not much else I need to do to the background other than attach my paper strips. I want to glue these down first, and then I'll glue down my cut file. I just eyeball the placement here. I don't need to measure this. To glue these down, I like to add a little wet glue in the corners, along with some glue lines from my glue runner. I'm lining these up with the blue at the top and the rolled edges to the inside of the layout. I am using more wet glue on the back of my cut file because I really want this to stick down. My cut file will go directly in the middle. This really is a simple design, and the cut file is doing all the work, but it makes such a cool impact. I'm going to glue down my photo too. I will do a little layering behind the photo, but not in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little wet glue to the corners now. And you can still see a touch of gray ink behind the photo. I love how that looks. And now for the fun part, I get to embellish. This is the part that always takes me the most time. I may go into a layout with an idea of where I want to place my embellishment clusters, but I don't usually plan what's going to go into each cluster. I did pick out some things from the embellishment pack that I thought would work on this layout. So here I'm just placing everything to see what I like and see what fits with this cut file. As usual, it takes me some time to fuss around with all of the embellishments and figure out where everything will go. I don't want to add a lot of decoration. I think this cut file with all of the colorful patterns is really nice on its own. The three main places I plan to add embellishments are above the photo, below the heart, and at the bottom under the letters I and F. I end up pulling three phrases from the ephemera pack that say true story, this is our story, and this story is so good. And that worked out perfectly. I love that the word story is in each cluster. And believe me, it's not lost on me that there is no story or journaling on this page. That's what made me realize I probably need a facing page to go along with this one, telling some of the stories that make this statement the truth. So I got married about a year and a half ago in my late 40s, and this is my first marriage. While my life was always good and I had no major complaints, how my life is now and where it's going now is just so much better than ever. I really do love our life, so I need to take the time to document the stories that explain why. Okay, back to my embellishment clusters. I'm adding things into each cluster a bit strategically. That is, I'm adding bits and pieces and colors that each cluster needs. When I add red to this one, I'm trying to make sure that the other two have a bit of red. If I add blue to this one, I want to make sure that there's something blue in the other two, and so on. By the way, just as a reminder, I offer a free sketch of every layout I share here on YouTube. Just click the link in the description box to my shop, add the sketch to the cart, check out with your email address so we know where to send it. This layout is sketch number 8. Now that I've decided to make the facing page, I'm going to save all of the flowers and the rest of embellishments for that page. I am going to add a few hearts from the puffy set, but I didn't need any of the little dots. And for the last finishing touch, I'm going to add some pewter mist splatters to each of my clusters. I like to add ink splatters on my layouts, but I'll be the first one to say I forget to do it half the time. I just pulled out my large nonstick craft sheet to protect my table, and I have a paper scrap covering up my photo. You could also do this inside a pizza box if you're worried about the ink flying around. There's no technique with this. I just pulled out the sprayer and I'm tapping on the nozzle. To me, ink spray is always going to be random. Where the ink goes is where it's supposed to be. If there were other areas of the layout I didn't want ink droplets on, I'd cover them up too. But here, it's just the photo I wanted to protect. I don't worry about mistakes or having ink fly somewhere I don't want it. The only way to be more precise is to use a stamp to get the splatters. And that's an option if you're not into the randomness. I have a stamp that sort of gives me ink splatters, but usually I just prefer the organic look I'm getting here. Basically, you get what you get, and that's okay with me. I'm also adding some ink drops along both of my striped border papers. And that's where I will call this one done. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're ever looking for a design element with a big impact, look no further than a large die cut like this. It helps fill your canvas, and all you really have to do is add embellishments. It didn't take a lot of time or energy, but I absolutely love the result. This I Love Our Life die cut is now available in my shop. Click the link in the description box below if you'd like more details. See you next time.